Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special Milwaukee Brewing Company edition of Milwaukee Beer Review. As always, I'm Josh.
And I'm Ross.
And tonight, we are sad to say that our beloved Milwaukee Brewing Company is evolving into less than what we ever expected them to be. It's unfortunate, sad.
It's disappointing. I mean, I think it's one of those places where when we started kind of really getting into the craft beer scene, especially like rare, like bottle releases, this is one of the first places I think you and I started kind of gravitating towards. Yeah. The 2nd Street location, we had a ton of fun there with the tours and the open houses. Yeah.
I mean, Milwaukee Brewing Company was always the place I would send people to if they were like, hey, I'm in town, what's a place to check? And I'm like, if you want to get a little toasty, go check out 2nd Street, go to the Milwaukee Brewing Company's beer tour, and it was like $10 a person at the time. You got a free pint glass with that $10, and you got unlimited access to the taps for like an hour and a half or something, 2 hours.
And the open house they always did on Saturdays was so much fun. It was like $15, and like the amount of Milwaukee Brewing Company pint glasses I now sitting at home because of that, it's insane. So one of our favorite beers of all time is Louie's Cherry Bounce. So we've done a review of Cherry Bounce on this channel before. Cherry Bounce is essentially an amber ale. It's their Louie's Demise, which is then barrel aged in brandy barrels, which is Louie's Resurrection. Then they take that and they put this in some additional brandy barrels and they age it with Door County cherries, and we get Cherry Bounce. Now, back in the day, this was a kind of tougher beer to get at times. You had to show up. On day of to get it. You
had to be there at 2nd Street, which is where we got this bottle from all the way back in 2017. So this has been sitting in the cellar. This is cellar certified per the label. So we're going to find out if this thing lasted. But we figured in honor of Milwaukee Brewing Company and one of our favorite beers they ever produced, let's crack this thing open and see what this is like 5 years later.
I think this was, maybe I'm wrong, someone can correct me, I think this was the last year they did the bomber bottles.
I think so. This is the last year bombers existed. You cannot find a bomber of anything Milwaukee Brewing Company related at this point. I don't know how many of these exist in the wild at this point, but we've got one. So I'm sad, but also excited at the same time. So let's get a little bit of nose on this thing and see what we got. It smells very sweet.
Yeah, it's got a little of that. You can smell that barrel aging coming out with the sweetness that kind of comes from the cherries. It's not the tart cherryness that I remember maybe from.
Yeah, it's a little more subdued, at least on the tart cherry notes, but it is tart. Like, I'm definitely getting a tart sour-ish note on the nose, and I hope that's the fruit.
Yeah.
I really hope that's the fruit. A little barley wine-esque.
Yeah, you can tell because the age of this beer, I don't know if you can see so much in this, but like the colors of each of our beers are definitely different. So the sediment has kind of kicked in my pour or your pour, but
a little bit. It smells good though. Very, like I said, very sweet. A little bit of malt character there. It smells like an amber ale, with a little bit of tartness to it, which is what you expect with this. So,
and again, like I want to actually kind of comment on that because like this is an amber ale. I know a lot of times when we do like these barrel aged beers, they're stouts and sometimes porters. Like amber ale is a very weird kind of odd beer to barrel age, and I know when we always drink this fresh, they've always done a really good job with it. So I'm really curious how this is held up. And amber ale, I think, is a very unique style to barrel age within this. So,
well, for the last time, a bomber bottle of Milwaukee's Cherry Bounce. Check it out. Cheers buddy. Ooh. There are still cherries there.
Some of the tartness is held up. It's still there. Again, it's such a unique taste and style being an amber ale. It's not like it's... When you think of this, you think, okay, this could be really heavy and everything. It's not. It's a light, kind of lighter beer and everything. And there's that nice tartness of cherries that kind of still kicks in. It's still there. But
you get the brandy hit, for sure too. It's not like super heavy on the spirit note, but it's really, really solid. I like the way it starts. I'm not as big of a fan of how this is finishing.
Correct.
It finishes a little almost.
It dissipates.
It dissipates. It tails off quickly.
Yeah.
the typical Louie's Cherry Bounce notes dissipate pretty quickly. The cherry dissipates. I still don't think it's bad by any stretch of the imagination. This is still solid 5 years in the bottle.
So this was also one thing we were talking about before we actually started filming is this is the first year they actually did brandy. They had done bourbon barrels up to this point, and the bourbon barrels add a bit more like harshness, booziness. This has a little more smooth kind of. Brandy's not as strong as bourbon. There's a little more smoothness to it. But it doesn't maybe pack as much of a punch as it had in the past. But
and I'm going to give them credit, though, for the cherry sticking around. I mean, this is the original Milwaukee Brewing Company brewers putting this together. I mean, this is still really, really good 5 years later.
No, it's really well done. The carbonation is held up. The taste profiles are still there. Going to the brandy, it's making it much more mellow and smooth as opposed to the bourbon. And that's just a dealer's choice. I mean, some people like the brandy, some people like the bourbon. Yep. I think the brandy was a good choice with the cherries, though. I think it actually makes it really good. Smooth.
If you're from Wisconsin, your brandy old fashions, folks, you love them. This is good. This is good. It is not a top tier beer at this point for me, but it is still really, really solid. 5 years in the bottle, Louie's Cherry Bounce for the final time out of a bomber. What are you giving it in 2022?
I have a real high measuring stick for Cherry Bounce. I'm probably going to stick this where it's at right now. I'm still going to stick it at 4. It wasn't when it was. I was a bigger fan, I think, when it was in the bourbon barrels. But I really do like this beer. This is a 4 right now. I think if I would drink this fresh or maybe a year later, it would have been higher. 5 years down the road, it's still a 4. I think it's a really good score.
It meshes really, really well. It's really, really solid. I'm going to go 4 as well. I think a 4 is a solid score on this. If you've still got one of these in your cellar, we want to buy it from you, so let us know. Or just drink it. Yeah. It's time. It's definitely at the point where you want to drink this. This is not getting any better at this point. In fact, it's probably getting worse the longer it sits.
I think it's on the downhill, yeah.
So, but still really solid beer. 5 years in. So Milwaukee Brewing Company, we love you. We are sad to see you go. We know some of your base beers are going to continue forward with the new brewery coming in to your spot downtown. However, you are one of the breweries that inspired us and brought us into this craft brewing scene here in Milwaukee. So we appreciate it. Cheers to you. Cheers to you, Ross. It's been a fun ride.
We'll miss you.
We will. That being said, we are not going anywhere. So check us out on the rest of our social media channels. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. We are on Untappd. We are on Instagram. We are also here on YouTube. So like, comment, subscribe. Would love to hear from you. If you've got one of these in the cellar, let us know. If you've tried one recently that's as old as this one, definitely let us know in the comments. Chances are pretty high none of you have. So appreciate you watching. Stick around. We've got a lot more coming, and we'll see you in a future episode.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.